Hi there, I'm Tim. Thank you so much for joining me as I try to repair this vintage Grand Seiko. This 50-something-year-old watch has some scratches on the dial and a pretty busted up case back. But still, what a gorgeous piece. And sadly, it's not running. The date can be set just like this, and the hands can be turned to the correct time, but it won't stay correct for long because this watch is not actually working. Because for some reason it's impossible to wind it. We are definitely dealing with a broken watch. So let's open it up, take a look inside, and see if we can find out what the issue is. This watch has to be wound because it's a mechanical watch. That means it's not powered by a battery, but by a system of tiny springs and gears and ratchets. The caseback is supposed to come off like this. Wow, this is one looker of a watch. Honestly, this might be the most beautiful movement I've ever worked on. The movement is what you see here, the mechanism that makes a watch tick. And normally you'd wind a mainspring just like this by turning the crown, which will keep it running for a day, sometimes longer. But not this one, something's off. To find out what exactly, we have a structured way of approaching this. We'll take it apart piece by piece, gear by gear, spring by spring, give everything a proper cleaning, and then reassemble it. That is, if we find the reason this watch isn't working, and if we're able to fix it. Otherwise, it's just a confusing bracelet. First, we have to remove the hands. I use a tiny bit of plastic to protect the dial. Even though it's already a bit damaged, I don't want to make it any worse. That's why we're not shy of using some protection. So let's put them away safely. And then I'll be removing the dial. But it seems I can't get to the screws holding the dial in place just yet. There is an extra ring around the movement, which is hiding the dial feed screws. Getting the dial off of this movement and safely put away is task number 1. The watch face is centered to the watch's appearance, so we can't risk any further damage. Let's see if removing these screws does the trick. Oh. Have to make sure I don't lose any part. Yeah, with this protective ring gone, I can get to the dial feed screws. Repairing a watch is quite technical, but I'm very happy you're tagging along, and I'll do my best to not get carried away by too much mechanical detail. There we go. Now I'll put it in this special box with a double membrane that keeps any item inside completely stuck in place. And then I'm going to screw the dial feed screws back in tightly, so I don't lose them along the way. I could take them out and put them aside, but any mechanical watch has so many differently sized screws you have to keep separated, I'd rather leave these ones in. Okay, let's start taking this thing apart. I'm not gonna lie, I'm more nervous than usual. This watch isn't just beautiful and expensive, it actually belongs to someone I care about. A good friend of mine got it as a wedding present from his father-in-law, a Japanese chef who runs a sushi restaurant here in town. He actually got it from his father, so this thing has been handed down a couple of times in the last 50 years. Oh, I have to be careful here. There are a couple of springs under high tension in any mechanical watch, and they just love to disappear if you're not paying attention. Many different bridges in such a watch have different screws, and you always have to pay attention not to mix them up. So let's compare these two to see if they look any different. Well, maybe they do, and you can tell, but I don't. I'll just keep them apart for now. My friend told me how important this watch is to him. When he got it from his father-in-law, it showed him that he got accepted into the family, He didn't expect a warm hug from this stern sushi chef, but this gift, which had been in the family for such a long time, just shows how much he cares for the man his daughter chose to marry. Now we come to the balance, the beating heart of a mechanical watch. This balance is actually held in place by 2 screws. Normally it's only one, again, prove that this is quite an exquisite movement. I sure hope nothing's wrong with it, because trying to fix the tiny spring actually running a watch is above my experience level. So let's carefully lift it out, and then let us take a look at it. My friend was happily wearing this watch for a couple of years, but one day it stopped working, which is a shame. It was lying in some drawer at home until his father-in-law explicitly asked him about it. You can imagine it's important he wears it again for the improvement of the family harmony. So it definitely needs fixing. It could be sent to Japan for a repair, but my friend trusted me to take a look at it, so that's a lot of pressure not to screw this up. I haven't actually been working on watches that long, but I was confident enough to say yes, and I sure hope I won't regret it. My guess is the mainspring running the watch has an issue, and I'm slowly working my way there now. Wow, the previous person working on this was not shy with grease. Some lubrication is very important, but I always learned it has to be the right amount. So let's take the ratchet off with the correct screwdriver. I'm doing my utter best to use the correct screwdriver on every screw I handle, because you might damage the screw or slip and scratch one of the bridges if you're using a wrongly sized one. And that would be a crying shame, since this movement is in such great shape. Now we are removing the ratchet wheel, which, together with the ratchet, keeps the power in the mainspring. I always use some pegwood and silly putty to clean off visible oil and grease before putting everything in the washing machine. That way the cleaning solution doesn't become saturated too quickly. Actually, a broken ratchet could be a reason why you turn the crown without any power becoming harnessed, but I don't see any damage here. With the winding bridge out of the way, we are one step closer to the mainspring barrel. I just can't believe how beautiful this movement is. The beveled angles, the Geneva striping, just stunning. And all of these aesthetics actually have practical reasons as well. A directional grain makes sure small particles of dust or broken off metal get caught on the bridges and don't roam freely to do any damage. So I'll be taking off this bridge, and lifting the bridge off has to happen as straight up as possible, so that's why I'm pushing it up from different sides. By creating an angle, you risk damaging the gear pivots, and those are incredibly tiny and could easily snap off. There's a system of levers going all around this movement, from the crown to the balance. So this is the stop second. These levers stop the gears from moving when you pull out the crown, so you can set your watch very accurately. And as you can see, I'm checking every gear for damage to the teeth and the pivots, because there might be more than one thing troubling a watch this old. It's not because you've got a bad back, your eyes are in perfect shape either. The gear system loses power and increases speed as you go from the mainspring barrel to the balance wheel. That's why there's a handful of gears and pinions in a mechanical watch to go from a couple of turns a day to a couple of turns a minute. Here we are, this is the mainspring barrel. Again, covered in a lot of grease. Let's take a look. I don't actually see any damage right at the bat, so let's get this lid out of the way first. Again, covered in grease. I wonder if the previous watchmaker thought he was working on a Honda engine instead of a watch. Let's push out the arbor. Oh wait, this is not supposed to come out like that. Part of the mainspring is stuck to the arbor. This is the arbor, and that is the center part of the mainspring. Yeah, it broke. Let's take the rest of the spring out of the barrel and take a look at the place where it got cut. Oh, okay, it's broken, but still, I'm not supposed to lose it. Okay, here we go. Yeah, the center coil gave out. I mean, after 50 years, some metal fatigue is inevitable. Well, I guess we know what's going on, and then we can take the rest of the movement apart. It won't be too easy finding a replacement spring because I've never before seen one that is so thick. It's definitely not standard size. This is a hand-wound watch. There are also automatic watches that have some extra gears and a rotor to keep the watch wound as you're wearing it and walking around. But I guess a hand-wound one needs a sturdier spring to keep a stable force as it slowly unwinds over the course of the day. Now Now we'll get to the anchor. I have to pay attention. The anchor is part of the final section of the gear train called the escapement, and the escapement turns the rotational motion of the gear train into a rocking motion of the balance. Again, checking pivots as we go. You can see we turn the movement around and we get to the cannon pinion, onto which the watch's hands are pressed. And because you need to be able to override the gear train to change the time manually, the cannon pinion itself is also pressed down. So we'll use our hands removal tool to take it off, again with the plastic. You always have to remind yourself you don't want to scratch or leave any mark. And then this small plate with the correctly sized screwdriver. In theory, you're supposed to dress the screwdriver blade exactly right each and every time for the screw you're working on at that moment. But if you don't tell anyone, I won't either. So let's take apart this wheel here to finish up the moving works. And then we get to the final part of the disassembly, the date set system. This is the part that makes the date jump at midnight. And it's actually the most complex way I've ever seen it done. With quite a huge array of springs and levers. Normally it doesn't look this complicated. So, I was holding down the spring so it wouldn't go flying, and it kicked something else right into orbit. Thank God this lever landed on the bench. I guess I'm really more nervous than usual working on this gift, so I have to be very careful. So I'll carefully come on, concentrate. I'm actually so close to finishing the disassembly, but okay, last attempt. If something goes wrong with this screw, I'm taking a break. Okay, come on. It's all in the head. I've done this many times, actually. I really don't want to hand back a half-destroyed watch in a plastic bag and suggest he'd send it to Japan for a repair because some parts went flying. Okay, it's disassembled. Wow, that was more difficult than it's supposed to be. Okay, turn it around again. And then I'm gonna clean up the pivot holes with some pegwood, just to manually remove the grease and oil that's dried up and the cleaning machine has more trouble with. And then I'll reinstall the balance, because you can't just put it in the washing machine freely. The balance wheel actually has a small hairspring. A spring as thick as a hair, which is so delicate that any interference might create severe damage. This spring is the true heart of a watch. It makes the balance run back and forth like this. And the anchor is kicked from left to right by the balance and makes the gear train move in small increments, multiple times per second. This way, a mechanical watch can become mighty accurate, although it's never as perfect as a battery-powered watch. And with that, we finished the first stage, the disassembly. Time to clean. Look what I got, a new mainspring. A retired watchmaker I know luckily had a replacement that matched the exact dimensions of the one that broke. First, I put some grease in the barrel, and then it's time to fit the new mainspring. I have to make sure it's facing the right direction, if not, the watch can't be wound at all. There we go. And then I'll add the arbor. And close the barrel up with this small tool. There we go. Now I'll add a bit of lubrication where the arbor meets the barrel. Since these parts are so small, without the right lubrication, they will wear each other down quickly. So for everything to run smoothly, just the right amount of oil and grease needs to go in the correct places. Not too much either. Too much will just collect dust and act like a grinding paste. That's why you just can't spray the whole movement with bicycle grease. It won't get you from A to B. It's just here to tell the time. Let me take off this spring. And then I'll remove the cap jewel off of the balance wheel. These jewels support the tips of the balance staff pivots, and I'm cleaning them separately in lighter fluid. Always a bit tricky to get it out. They have to be absolutely spotless. So there we go. And then I'll try to give each side an identical drop of oil, placed right in the center of the jewel. And now I'll place the chaton back over the jewel without touching the edges. There. It protects those delicate balance staff pivots. And then I carefully reinstall the dia shock absorber. I hold down the 3 legs with the points of 2 tweezers, using the final point to put securely in the middle. That way the shock absorber can go flying off. Let's check. Yeah, it's moving freely. Perfect. Next, I'm moving the balance back out of the way to start assembling the movement. I wouldn't be the first watchmaker to accidentally slip and mess up the hairspring. And I'm hoping my nerves won't interfere with the assembly like they did during the disassembly. This watch not only has a certain financial value, but also a sentimental one. So I want to do the best job I possibly can. I'll start with the yoke. So put some oil on the post. And I don't hear any squeaking, so that's perfect. Even though this is a vintage Grand Seiko, when I took it apart you might have noticed the dial just said Seiko. As you may know, Seiko is Japan's largest watch brand. The company's been around since 1881, that's even earlier than 1882, a full year. They're still going strong, and you can buy a mechanical Seiko starting around €100, a Grand Seiko from about 5,000, but Seiko actually offer watches that go well over €100,000. In the 1960s, Seiko founded Grand Seiko as a sub-brand to drive innovation and prove that Japanese watchmakers could not only compete with, but but actually surpassed their Swiss counterparts. Grand Seiko aimed for unmatched design and finishing and accuracy. Here's the setting lever spring, the one that jumped away during the disassembly. So I'm careful that doesn't happen again. And before I install the next part, I need to oil this spot. This pivot hole needs some lubrication for the gear train, but I'm doing it now because, look, I'm covering it up with this wheel of the moving works. The watch I'm working on now is a 45GS. It was produced between 1968 and 1973. It's what's called a high-beat watch. Most of the time, a battery-driven watch will have a second hand that moves 60 times per minute. But to be accurate, a mechanical watch has to beat much faster. Most move the second hand 6 times per second. Higher-end ones like Rolex go up to 8. But this Grand Seiko was moving at 10 beats per second. That is so fast, the second hand glides instead of ticks. And the reason is that small timing deviations have a much smaller impact on the accuracy of the watch. The downside is that because all the parts are moving and rotating so fast, there will be more wear on the movement. But I have to say, for a watch that is at least 50 years old and clearly worn a lot, the movement is in fantastic shape. This is the first bridge on the top plate side, which is the side we're working on right now. And underneath are the gears that link the gear train to the motion works. All mechanical watches rely on a mainspring and a gear train to bring power to the escapement, but how they're built varies from movement to movement. So if you're working on a caliber you've never seen before, you need to pay close attention to how it is specifically constructed. Put the wrong screw in the wrong spot and it might stop the whole movement. And then we come to the cannon pinion. It's friction fit, so it needs to snap in place like this. And I don't need to keep repeating this is a high-end movement, but one of the ways you can tell is that not only the balance wheel has those cap jewels that I took off, the anchor wheel does too. I'll put a drop of high-viscosity oil on the pivot hole from the inside, and then use this ultra-fine oiling tool, probably the thinnest pin I've ever seen, to push the oil through. And this oiler is so delicate that touching anything with it could break it. Now I'll do the same on the other side. I have to treat it like a newborn kitten or a blooming flower in spring, and not push it forcefully into a pivot hole. Okay, put it back without touching the sides. There we go, and put it away safely. So we get to the gear train. First I'll oil the center wheel axle where it meets the cannon pinion, and then we can assemble all the different gears. That small gear with the steel teeth is the anchor wheel. It has specially shaped teeth that interact with the anchor. It is such an intricate system of tiny mechanical precision that still amazes me every time I work on it. Each gear drives the pinion of the next one, so the order in which they're placed is important. There we go, all gears are in place. Normally, I'd reinstall the gear bridge now, but this watch has that stop-second system that is placed around the gears all the way to the crown. And the gear train bridge covers those levers too, so let's get them in first. Each post needs a tiny bit of low-viscosity oil, and then the correct lever is placed over it. It's a fairly complex design. In newer movements, there's usually just one lever between the winding stem and the balance wheel. But this works as well, and we've made our way to the final lever interacting with the sliding pinion. It's always nice to cover a part up again, so we'll reinstall this gorgeous bridge. All the gears need to line up with their pivot holes. If they don't, and I screw the bridge down, the pivots will break and the watch won't run. It can be quite a hassle to get them seated correctly, but it went rather smoothly this time. Careful now. Each wheel needs to turn freely, otherwise I have to stop. So I'll screw down this final screw. And with the bridge in place, we'll get to the pivot holes. Depending on the size of the wheel, I use different viscosity oils. The watch's accuracy is heavily influenced by the wrong oil or even the wrong amount of oil in the pivot holes. And yes, it might seem obsessive to chase perfection like this, but the watch has to run consistently. Temperature and the position the watch is in should only affect it in the least amount possible. It's also very poetic that even though there is a more accurate and an even cheaper way of tracking time with a battery-powered quartz watch, that an outdated mechanism is still around. And that engineers and actual watchmakers, not hobbyists like me, try to achieve the highest degree of perfection possible, even knowing they'll never be as precise as a €5 plastic watch. Okay, with the anchor in place, let's turn the movement around. First, I'll lubricate the pivot holes on this side. Here. And then we'll reinstall the mainspring barrel we assembled earlier. On top of it comes this winding bridge that will hold the ratchet wheel and crown wheel. Most of the places where there's occasional steel-on-steel contact, I'll apply a thicker yellow grease for some heavy-duty lubrication. But for parts that need smooth, continuous motion, I'm using a high-viscosity oil. Once these wheels are in, I can finally find out if the watch winds again. I haven't seen any other damage, but it's possible the mainspring broke another part of the movement when it snapped. If it still won't wind, I'll have to disassemble everything again to track the problem. But for now, let's hope a fresh mainspring did the trick. These Grand Seiko watches were pushing the envelope when they came out in the 60s. Until then, Japanese watchmakers were kind of playing catch-up with the Swiss, but they closed the gap fast. The Swiss had been organizing competitions to see who could build the most accurate mechanical watch, and once the Japanese entered these chronometer trials in the late 60s, they were so dominant that the Swiss eventually stopped holding them altogether. And this exact movement that I'm working on, the 45GS, was actually submitted to a Swiss certifying body for accuracy. So 50 years ago, this was a top-tier timepiece, pushing the limits of what was possible in regards to accuracy in a commercial mechanical watch. Seiko pulled this off by building two rival divisions that pushed each other to excel, the Suwa and Daini studios. They competed around the same design language and making similar watches, but in a head-to-head competition that made the brand names these watches were working under, King Seiko and Grand Seiko, household names in regards to high-quality watchmaking, design and durability. And today, those watches are still highly collectible. Okay, the winding system is in, so let's give it a try. That feels good. I'll add a bit more grease to the ratchet. You don't want to feel any metal on metal grinding. It has to be a perfectly smooth operation. All right, here goes nothing. Yes, I can get it fully wound. Fantastic. Let's run a final check. With the gear train under tension, the anchor should snap side to side. Okay, this is good news. Let's do a quick cleanup. And now it's the moment of truth. Time to put the balance wheel back into place. It's not moving yet. Let me give it a small puff with the bellows. There we go. It came to. I was really hoping that mainspring was the only issue. This is what it's all about. After all the focus and quite some frustration, seeing it come back to life makes everything worth it. Amazing. Yes! Look at this thing go. Okay, with the watch working, we'll do some micro adjustments to get it running as accurately as possible. Right now it's running about half a minute slow per day, but I kinda want to get it closer to perfection. Let's see. Oh wow, +2 seconds. Let's turn it around and see how it does with the dial side up. -3. And crown down. +10. Yeah, this rounds out very nicely. That means we're getting to the final part of the movement assembly, which is the date system. It was already complicated taking it apart, so let's hope nothing goes wrong during the reassembly. Most date systems I've worked on use a rotating wheel with an internal spring to make the date jump around midnight, but here they went with an external spring that looked quite finicky. I wonder why they chose this solution. If you know, feel free to leave a comment. Grand Seiko is still around, or actually I should say back around. It went dormant after reaching its peak in mechanical watchmaking in the 1970s. That's because Seiko actually completely changed the industry around the same time. The company was developing the battery-powered quartz watch, which quickly became a much cheaper and more accurate alternative to mechanical watches that almost wiped traditional watchmaking off of the face of the planet. King Seiko and Grand Seiko both went under for a while, as did most of the Swiss watchmaking industry. Oh, I have to be careful here with these springs. I haven't been doing this all that long, so I still have to be really careful not to launch any parts into the air. When I started out, I spent half the time on my hands and knees with a flashlight and a magnetic bar, trying to find and scoop up lost springs and levers and jewels. You can recognize a beginning watchmaker by their dirty knees and calloused palms from all the crawling around on all fours. Okay, and with this oiling done, we're about to get to that strange spring I was just talking about. I feel I'm getting nervous again. I'm so close to finishing this movement. Okay, it's in place. Some final grease needs to be added. And then I can't wait to immediately cover it up with its plate. I'll be happy when it's in place and everything is safely tucked away. Okay, I have to concentrate. Final screw, almost. Good. What a relief. Now just this final guiding lever. Even though Grand Seiko and King Seiko were for a long time just names from a mechanical past, both of them have been back to manufacturing watches. They make new models, but also reissues of classic ones. Grand Seiko actually offered a recreation of this exact watch, the 45GS, in 2024. Okay, with this lever and spring in place, time to place the final bridge. These are those tiny screws I was comparing right at the... What? Oh no. Oh no, God, I'm almost there. What happened? Where did it go? Oh, come on. Okay, can't move my feet. Don't move my arms. Let me check the movement first. It can get stuck anywhere. Where? Oh, thank God, there it is. Wow, this is not good for my heart. Oh, I'm so relieved. Oh. Okay, let me screw it down quickly. Forever gone. I thought that screw forever gone. There we go. Okay. Has to be correct. Now I'll add the hour wheel on top of the cannon pinion. And it looks like it's operating just fine. Okay. And with the date wheel, we get to the visual parts of the watch. I have to be extra careful not to even touch it with the screwdriver blade. And with that said, the movement is completely assembled. Yes! Time to take a look at this dial. There's some damage around the date window, and I hope I can wipe it off with a cleaning stick. Hopefully it's just some dirt that'll come off easily. No, doesn't look like anything's happening. It's definitely a scratch. You know, I'm gonna leave it like this. I don't want to accidentally scratch it any further. You know, you can't do everything. So for now, I'm just gonna get rid of all the dust. Same for the movement. No dust should remain. Okay, you know, even the smallest particle could clog something up. And that's how it comes back together. Next up is installing the hands. We place them at exactly 12 o'clock, because if they're correctly set there, they should be perfectly aligned at all times. There we go. I'm using these special carbon tweezers so I don't cause any hairline scratches on the polished hands. Most of the work I do is with brass tweezers, just for the same reason, not to damage the harder steel surfaces of the watch movement. So if I did everything right, the date should jump close to midnight. Yeah, I'm happy with that. Okay. Final hand is the seconds hand. Let's put that on. Wow, this thing is thin. Look at those hands, the black center with the polished sides. They definitely knew what they were doing. And then I want to take a look at the case. This case has an absolutely gorgeous shape with all these pronounced angular lines, beautiful edges, and extremely high polishing. The downside, every little scratch shows on these surfaces, but I'm not good enough to get rid of these scratches without polishing away the edges. The only part I feel comfortable with is the back cover. I just have to be careful not to damage this central icon, which has a beautiful grain. So I will cover it up with some heat-resistant tape and then make sure it's a perfect fit with only the steel surface accessible. There we go, time to do some polishing. Let's take a look. Wow, I'm happy with this result, looking good. I didn't remove the deepest scratches, but it's 50 years old. It can have some wrinkles. One last cleanup. My friend will be so relieved that he can finally show his father-in-law that he's wearing his wedding gift again. You don't want to spite a man who's that skilled with a knife. And then we can take a final look at this gorgeous movement before we have to close it up again. Nowadays, many mechanical watches have an open case back so you can see the movement, but I feel privileged to work on this kind of watch where, despite the finishing being so exquisite, it's only the watchmaker who gets to see it. I'm very happy to share it with you, though. This case, despite being quite scratched up, still impresses because of all the different facets and surfaces. Every visible aspect of the entire watch follows the Seiko grammar of design, a set of rules created by Seiko's chief designer, Tanaka Taro. For example, light and dark should be highly contrasted, and there shouldn't be any curves on the case, just flat surfaces with sharp corners. The result is an immaculate watch. I'm honestly quite jealous my friend got this as a gift, but I'm very happy for him he'll be able to wear it again. And with that, we close up the watch and almost finish our journey together servicing this vintage Grand Seiko. A final look at the mirror polish. I'm really happy how this came out. Well, just look at that. My friend better be happy this thing is up and running again. That's what I love about these mechanical watches. 50 years old, a watch with visible history, and with some cleaning and oiling, the whole thing is working just fine again. And then we'll put the strap back on, which means we've reached the end of this video. Thank you so much for joining me all the way. I hope you enjoyed it, and if you have any questions or if you have advice to give, feel free to leave a comment. I'll be happy to see you again for the next watch service. Take care, bye.